Ladies and gentlemen, fellas, welcome in to basically what is right now going to be the Masters Eve week at the Houston Open. But we actually get a good field. We get Dustin Johnson finally returning. We haven't seen Dustin Johnson now in 6 weeks, and he's going to headline this event pretty easily, the only single-digit odds favorite. And if you're talking about DraftKings, which we're about to get into, right now he comes in as the only player basically above $11,000, and he's probably going to pick up a lot of ownership. So we'll discuss that. Basically, what we do here is we're going to go through each salary range. We're going to discuss all these fellas. We're going to figure out the way to be the most informed, discussing ownership, discussing projections, discussing just everything that goes into that projection, right? Recent performance, some of the key stats, and then we'll go from there in terms of which salary ranges the players that I like in every single range, all the way from $11,000 Dustin Johnson to the bottom of the barrel in the $6,000 range. Welcome in right now. Like I said, it's a little bit of a tune-up week, right? It's not as bad as the Bermuda Championship field, right? Not even near as close as that. I mean, you have guys right now actually in the 9K range that we want to play, in the 8K range that we want to play that don't just look like $6,000 golfers. You have some pretty elite names in this field, right? Right now, from Brooks Koepka returning, from Terrell Hatton, who's been having a fantastic past year to year and a half. Dustin Johnson, like we said, the aforementioned, is going to be returning in this field. It's going to be at the Houston Open this week. So just a couple things to discuss in terms of the course itself before we get into the actual field and the players and the DraftKings salaries and all that stuff. The course is going to be a par 71. It's going to be just around below 7,100 yards. And when this is usually the case, you don't have to look at distance all that much. Now, we don't have the biggest of sample size here at this event, but from the sample size that we do have at this course, and basically since professional events being played at this course, you're seeing that ball striking and really just your approach play is going to matter a lot. You're seeing that approach play from 200 plus yards is going to matter. Now, that can be kind of skewed, but you're still seeing that it's going to be important from 150 to 175, 175 to 200. And basically what that's saying to you is that, well, your second shot on your par fours, your third shot, your second shot also on the par fives is going to matter a lot more than what you're doing off the tee. Most par fours are going to be from 450 to 500 yards, but there's also a lot from 350 to 400. So it's kind of all over the place in terms of distance. You're going to be having a lot more success and you're going to have a lot more weight from what we've seen so far in a limited sample size on your approach play, your ball striking. So that will be weighted a little bit more. Again, limited sample size, so it's going to be skewed just from a couple players' performance, but putting here, it seems to be a little bit more important than in other places. Again, that's not going to be as much predictive as it's just going to be looking back retrospectively, but that's what you're getting here, a par 71, just under 7,100 yards. So what this basically means is that everybody is in play, right? It just makes the guys that don't have as much distance off the tee not as much at a disadvantage at this type of a course. It does not make Dustin Johnson and Tony Feno and Brooks to an extent, like these guys that are up here and they're going to be players that are fantastic off the tee, right? Or at least have distance off the tee right now. When you talk about Tony Feno, when you talk about DJ coming into this field as like top 5 guys, if you say just long-term off the tee this year and really the past 50 rounds, being around the top 10 in that department. Scotty Scheffler, Victor Hovland, Sergio, these types of guys are not going to be at a major disadvantage just because they have more distance. Nowhere near that, right? But you will have to stay accurate, so that's another nuance to just kind of factor into it. So basically what we're going to get into, and before we do, hit the like button, if you will, one time. The more informed you are, the better chance that you have at winning. Hit the big old subscribe button that pops up. Yes, we're going to be doing some golf content. This is now, I believe, 4 weeks in a row that we're doing it. I just enjoy doing the golf content. Mixing it in there is a nice little refresher. So just different change of pace from all the NFL content we put out. If you are just finding me through golf, we put out about 9, 10 different types of videos, podcasts on the podcast feed. If you're listening there or the YouTube channel, we do a couple of live streams a week for the NFL. I'm planning to do a live stream next week for golf because it's Masters week, right? Probably not going to do it this week. I'll plan to do that next Wednesday. But yes, these videos come out on Tuesday afternoon. They've been doing that for the past month or so. And if you enjoy them and if you enjoy the NFL, you can check out all the other content we have here. Like, subscribe, all those things are greatly appreciated. And this video is going to be brought to you today by Monkey Knife Fight. Look, if you're not familiar with Monkey Knife Fight yet, they have contests. If you're playing them maybe already in NFL, if you're not familiar at all, they have them for the PGA and golf as well. And it's a ton of fun. It's a player prop site. So they have like your very standard, more or less, your over-unders. For golf, that would be like fantasy points. So you can do over-under fantasy points. It's daily fantasy sports and prop betting kind of combined in there. But it could also just be over-under birdies for the contest, over-under bogeys, all these types of things. Will they win this hole? Who's going to win this hole, right? This player versus this player, the 1v1s. So it's a bunch of different contests, but then there's a lot of other player props you can check out on Monkey Knife Fight. So if you want to support them for them supporting me, you can check them out. It's linked down below. My last name, Vetri, Vetri. You'll get a free money bonus up to $50. You put 10 in, you get 10 back. You put 20 in, you heavy hitter, a kingpin, a head honcho. You want to put 50 in, bam, you got $100 Rooskies in your account. So you can check that out, Monkey Knife Fight. Proud sponsors of the show. Appreciate you all over at Monkey Knife Fight. Let's get into it now. So the $10,000 plus range will start. We got 5 golfers up here. So far we've had like KJ Choi. He's withdrawn from this event as of my recording. If anybody else does, I'll update the projections and rankings for this event, which are on Patreon, link down below. So you have up towards the top right now, Dustin Johnson, and he's going to be coming in with ownership, and I expect the highest amounts of ownership. And I do think that it'll be a decent gap from anybody else, because based on my projection, and for anybody using optimizers and projections, a lot of the lineups are going to be getting a lot of Dustin Johnson because he's going to be projected out for, honestly, right now my projection is like 7 or 8 more points than anybody else in this field. So he's going to go into a lot of lineups just from pure upside. Like the value will be okay, right? It'll be fine, but the price point makes it not as great, but the overall just upside in his projection is going to put him in a lot of lineups. Well, the advantage that you have is maybe somebody who only plays one. Even if you play 150, you have an advantage, but if you play like 1 to 3 to 10 lineups, well, honestly, I'm probably just fading him if I'm playing just one lineup. Like in a single entry event, I'm probably fading Dustin Johnson. That seems crazy. And in 150 lineups, not going to have 0%, but I don't know if I get above above the field on his 30% number. It's easier to do that in 150 lineups because you can get 60 or 70%, and now you're leveraging the best player probably in the field. In your 1 to 3 lineups, I would probably fade him and just try and knock out 30% of the field if Dustin Johnson just basically doesn't finish in the top 3. If Dustin Johnson wins, yeah, you're probably screwed. If he finishes second or third, he scores a lot of overall scoring points, not counting the finishing position, then yeah, you're probably also screwed. But if he finishes 4th, 5th, 6th, right, it's the Will Zalatoris play from last week. Zalatoris comes in 30+% owned. We just don't play him in most of our contests. I faded him 100% in 150s, and it doesn't hurt us because he doesn't win the event. He doesn't even come close for the most part to winning that event, not even close at all. So Dustin Johnson's probably going to be somebody that I just look past and don't play much of this week, mainly just from a game theory standpoint. If you want to play him, that's fine. Like, you can get different pretty easily elsewhere. It's a 128-person field, so if you want to make the argument that it's not 158, it's a lot easier for the best of the best to win. I 100% hear you on that one. But there's also the argument that we haven't seen him. He's coming off of COVID, and we haven't seen him in 6 weeks. So for him to be this highly owned at this price point, I think that it might be a little bit of a mistake, especially in golf, where ownership is the biggest thing that you have an advantage on in terms of, in really most sports. But if a guy's going to be coming in, I don't know, 3 times his own, 4 times his own, 5 times his own, there's other guys around him who are actually playing recently, who maybe don't have the great recent form of Dustin Johnson winning in 2 out of his last 4 starts, and then the other 2 starts finishing second at the BMW and 6th at the US Open, right? He was fantastic the last time we saw him, but it's been a while since the end of September. So that's something that we have to kind of keep in mind and look into. Again, if you want to play him, it's completely fine. I'm just going to be fading him for game theory reasons. The guy that I'll probably be going to in this range is 2 guys. The first one is going to be Tony Feno. So he sets up from a bomber standpoint, right? But he's also going to set up when it comes to just his ball striking. So he's going to have the best of both worlds here. He's 7th overall in his last 50 rounds of ball striking. Right now at $10,900, he's going to pick up ownership as well. But I think being right next to Dustin Johnson, he'll probably come in half his own, if not a third, the ownership. If Dustin Johnson comes in 30% owned, you might have Tony Finau around 12 to 15% ownership. Now, we haven't seen Tony Finau all that much either. I mean, we saw him basically last time at the Zozo, but before that, we hadn't seen him since the US Open. At the Zozo, he looked fine. He finished 11th overall. He ended up gaining strokes everywhere. The putter is the thing that, honestly, right now, it's usually hot and cold for him. It's been a little bit more hot than cold as of late. He's basically gaining in 3 of his last 4 events at this point, coming off of gaining 2.5 with the putter. At $10,900, he has a nice projection for me right now. He's not my second highest projected golfer. That'll be a guy that is going to be 10,300, Tyrrell Hatton on this slate, that I'm going to have interest in, but he's also going to be probably one of the lowest owned guys in this range. I think Brooks, coming off the injury, not seeing him in a while, he'll be the lowest owned in the 10K plus range, but then I think Finau sandwiched in between basically Brooks, Hatton, and really Hatton and DJ will come in with the second lowest ownership. He actually has some course history here at this event, so I'm going to be taking Tony Finau at $10,900 as the first guy that I have interest in this range. The next guy will be Tyrrell Hatton. He's going to pick up ownership. I don't think it will be to the levels, pretty close, maybe he gets to 25%. I don't think he'll be picking up similar ownership to DJ. I think DJ by far will have the most ownership in this range, but Hatton at $10,300. So if I'm not going to be playing much Brooks, if I'm not going to be playing DJ, I can take on this 20+% ownership in a single entry in a lot of my lineups in terms of leverage. And he's been playing well. He's been playing well for a while now. So you had a little bit of a stretch here where you didn't really know what was going on with Hatton, right? He was winning events, all these WGCs, he was playing well, and then he comes out, he wins the Arnold Palmer, and then he's looking fantastic at the RBC and the Rocket Mortgage, threatening to win on Sundays at, I believe, the RBC and the Rocket Mortgage up there on the weekend as well. And then he finishes almost dead last at the St. Jude. He misses the cut at the PGA Championship. He's finishing 25th at the Northern Trust, and it's a little bit hard to see what to expect out of him. And now he comes out the 3rd at the CJ Cup, comes out at 28th at the Zozo, playing pretty well right now. His only kind of leaking part of his game right now is around the green, and that's kind of been the case over the last, I would say, 50 rounds. He ranks 58th out of 128 people in this field in that department, but he's very good ball striker. He's very good on approach. His tee to green game is also fine, 13th overall over the last 50 rounds. Hatton at $10,300. He'll pick up ownership. I'm going to be getting here, though. I think Hatton overall, even factoring in that 20% ownership number, probably my favorite play in the 10K plus range, and then Finau after that. To close up this range, if you've been watching my content, and honestly, we took the hiatus for like 2 months really when the NFL started from golf content, but Hideki is usually a guy I don't get to. Hideki just really rarely hurts you, especially when he's priced in this 5-figure range. Like Hideki, I don't really plan on him winning anytime soon. It's been like 4 years, and if he finally wins, then I lose one time in 4 years by not playing Hideki, right? But Hideki, you're like hoping that you get a top 20, and even when he gets top 20, his finishing position points aren't there as much. He's probably arguably one of the worst 5 putters in this entire field, so it's hard to get there consistently. He's lost strokes putting in 4 out of his last 5 events. That's something that you're probably used to at this point, but he's not even threatening like these top 5 finishes. Like you had it at the BMW, you had the 3rd place at the BMW, and even if you didn't play him there, it didn't really hurt you all that much. And then basically his last 3 events, a miscut, a 21st, and a 28th. He's just basically like a walking top 25 or a top 30, but the problem is he rarely finishes ahead of the top 15. So when a guy at $10,000 is finishing 17th for you, you're going to need a lot of eagles in there for it to actually pay off. So Hideki, look, he's going to burn me at some point, hopefully in the next 5 or 10 years for his sake to actually win an event. But for right now, he's not really hurting me all that much. He's not taking away from the dollar Ruskies in my pockets. Let's move now to the $9,000 range as we close up this range. Basically right now, Tony Finau and Hatton, And obviously, I'm playing a lot of lineups. Like if I play my 150s, I'm going to have some Dustin Johnson. So the no's on this are just to help the people playing 1 to 5 to 10 lineups, which is the majority of my audience. So yes, if I'm playing like 1 to 5 lineups, I would prefer Tony Feno and Hatton to try and start there with a build, or at least those players in your player pool compared to like a DJ, a Brooks, and a Hideki. But if you're playing 150 lineups, I might fully fade Hideki and Brooks, but I'll probably still have some Dustin Johnson. Moving now to the 9K range, it's going to be headlined by a couple of young players at this point. I mean, Victor Hovland and Scotty Scheffler up top. I have similar interest in all these guys to start this thing up. Like they're all going to be picking up ownership, from Hovland to Scotty Scheffler to Russell Henley. All these guys will be looking relatively the same at this point. Based on the price points, I probably go to Scotty Scheffler just because I know about his scoring upside. All these guys are basically top 5 over their last 50 rounds when it comes to just their overall ball striking. You have Russell Henley right now, number 1 in ball striking, number 1 tee to green, and number 1 in approach. So he's looked very good. The upside in Scotty Scheffler's game, though, is his ability to absolutely score. And even if he finishes 17th like he did last week at the Zozo, because he loses 4 strokes putting, his ability to pick up just so many birdies and his eagle potential just kind of outlasts some of that finishing position. More times than not, like he's going to win his finishing position by maybe like 5 to 10 spots. So his 17th place finish is going to actually look like the scorers who are finishing top 10. So that's the upside there. But Russell Henley in this range has also been good. You're just going to get ownership on all these guys. Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, and Henley, all their projections, and in terms of my projections or rankings down below on Patreon. You can check them out, patreon.com/Sal_Vetri_. Like everything's going to look similar for these guys. The recent form that you're getting right now in back-to-back basically events, a third at the CJ Cup, a fourth at the Zozo for Russell Henley, has been very good. He just has to avoid those blow-up weeks on the greens right now. He even had a blow-up week to an extent at the Zozo. He lost over 5 strokes putting, and he still has a 4th place finish. That's because he hasn't lost strokes on approach. He hasn't lost strokes basically tee to green, I think, since June, since basically the restart happened for the golf. So this is going to be something that's very close to watch. I think that he's going to be continuing to pick up ownership. He does have a victory at this event and another top 10 back in 2018, winning in 2017. He's very close to a yes for me. It's just the ownership coming in on him is basically saying that at $9,400, he's probably going to have to continue what he's doing with these close to top 10 performances if Russell Henley is indeed going to come out here and be like 25% owned, the second or third highest golfer in the range. So if you're playing like a couple of lineups and you're fading DJ, yeah, Henley's fine to go to. Is consistently as of late has been fantastic. You can count on a top 25 from him at this point. That's basically what he's been doing everywhere, but a ton of top 10 finishes. Right now he has 4 top 10 finishes in his last 6 events with nothing worse than a 27th. So Henley's fine to go to at 9,400. I probably prefer Scotty Scheffler just to get a little bit of an ownership discount. I don't know if it'll be that severe though. If Henley comes in 25%, Scheffler still might be 15, 20% owned. So this range down here, you see a couple of yeses on these guys, and I'll explain why I have yeses on them, and it's basically just due to the projection and the ownership that we're getting right now. So Adam Scott, who's also returning since seeing on the COVID list, I believe, then you have Sanjay in here. These guys are going to be yeses, and if you're watching on YouTube, you could see that Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, and Russell Henley are X's, which in my model just basically means that they're maybes at this point, and it's because they all pretty much grade out for very similar, I would say, projections in my model, but their ownerships are way different. You're probably going to have like 10% less ownership on both of these guys from Sanjay to Adam Scott compared to the Henleys and the Scotty Schefflers of the world, and what you're getting right now to Sanjay is some wishy-washy play, but it's been a lot better than the beginning of the year. Like Sanjay right now, he's finishing, I mean, back-to-back events in the 40s isn't great, but then he had a 13th, a 28th, and 11th, a 22nd. That was after coming off a stretch of just missing a ton of cuts or finishing like dead last, right? A miscut at the RBC, then 3 straight 50 or worse finishes, another miscut, a miscut at the PGA, miscut at the Northern Trust, but he's been playing stable golf as of late. He's been finishing basically very similar to Scotty Scheffler. Now he's cheaper with a similar projection, and he's actually going to come in with lower ownership. Similar things can be said for a guy in Adam Scott right now, who Adam Scott's game is kind of all over the place at this point. Like the approach play is the one thing that you can probably count on. His tee to green game isn't that bad either. Like it's just average, but for his price point, you would like to see it a little bit higher. Adam Scott, we have not seen either since basically the last time that we saw Dustin Johnson. So this is a concern here that we haven't seen him in a long time. His game before that wasn't clicking anywhere near. He finished 38th at the US Open, losing strokes on approach, losing strokes in a lot of different places. So Adam Scott, I'm actually probably going to go in here. Yes is probably a little bit too aggressive. I'm going to change Adam Scott to a maybe. We're going to change Scotty Scheffler and Henley both to yeses, just knowing that their ownership is going to be a little bit more than Sanjay's. But if we're kind of going through this thinking that I'm going to be personally fading in a lot of my lineups Dustin Johnson, then I can eat some of this ownership on this mid-range, where I think it is a very good and loaded mid-range. From Hovland down to Sanjay, and to an extent Adam Scott here. Just a little bit weary about not seeing him in 6 weeks. That's going to be a lot of guys that you can actually get to. Probably not going to play much Sergio or Jason Day, although it is important to call out Sergio right now is number 1 off the tee, and his tee to green play is top 5 in this field. He's probably not going to pick up all that much ownership either, maybe single-digit ownership, so at least something to be pointing out. Now we get to the defending champion at this event in Lonzo Griffin, who we're used to playing this guy, I don't know, like he's always hovering at like 7,200 or 6,800 depending on the event. If he didn't win this event last year, he'd probably be somewhere in like the $7,500, $7,700 range, but we have him here at $8,900. I'm not going to fully exclude Lonzo or some of these guys that are around him. Like Lonzo and Doc Redman won't be fully excluded from my player pool. Lonzo's just playing good golf. A 7th at the CJ Cup and 11th at the Zozo. He has a bunch of other top 10 and top 20 finishes as of late. A 10th at the BMW, a 18th at the Tour Championship. So Lonzo's playing well. He obviously had the win here last year. $8,900 is a lot to swallow. I won't remove him from my player pool. I don't think I'll get a lot of him. Same can be said for Doc Redman, but it is going to be a situation where I'm not going to fully fade him or take him out of my player pool. Like some guys I will here, like Zach Zornson's picking up ownership, probably won't get there. Corey Connor's projection in my projections and model right now is not that great. great. See who Kim's picking up ownership. I'm probably just going to fade it because everybody around him looks exactly the same from a projection standpoint. One guy that I actually do like getting to, and I actually have him as a yes right now because he grades out a little bit better, and he actually grades out pretty close to like the top of the 8K range, similar to Lonzo and Doc Redman, but he's priced at $8,100. He's going to be Cam Davis, and he was cut here at this event last year. I don't think he's going to pick up all that much ownership, really probably not much ownership at all. Maybe get somewhere around like 6-7% ownership for Cam Davis, and he's been playing decent golf as of late, right? And this was in much tougher events, some of them. So you have the 52nd at the Shriners, which is really going to suck down his ownership. But if you look at all of his events right before that, I mean, the recency bias, you take that out. A 6th place, a 36th, a 29th, a 12th, and a 15th. So those are some very strong finishes. And what got him at the Shriners? Well, basically his approach play was off a little bit, and his around the green play was off a little bit. So he's a very stable golfer, I would say, all around. The biggest strengths that you're going to see in Cam Davis's game as of late is just going to be his off the tee game, and then everywhere else he's just basically very average or above average out of 128 players. But in this price range, he's just very average. So if his off the tee game is clicking and everything else isn't just absolutely leaking, like you've basically been seeing at the 6th at the Sanderson Farms, and when he was finishing top 15 and top 12 at the Wyndham and the 3 Open, he starts to become a player at $8,100 that, yeah, he's very live for a top 10 finish. So I like the top 10 bets on Cam Davis, and at $8,100, he's the guy that I probably like the most based on ownership and projection and just overall fit for this course and price in the 8K range. So we now move to the $7,000 range. If you're still watching right now, please do take a second of your time, hit the like button, the big old subscribe button pops up. I appreciate that a ton. Moving now to the 7K range, there's a lot of guys in here that are going to look pretty appealing, like Denny McCarthy at $7,900 in this type of a field. He just looks kind of out of place. It seems like you would think that he'd be in the 8K range, which I think is why you're probably going to see some ownership coming in on him. Because of that, I'm probably just going to get the sum. Like the only thing you have from Denny McCarthy is the putter, so I don't want to be playing a guy who maybe comes in, I don't know, somewhere around 10-15% owned if that's where he's going to be coming in by the end of the week, just because of the fact that he has a really good putter and he's been decent in some other spots as of late. Because everywhere else, overall, like tee to green, 109th out of 128 people, he's more so probably should be priced around like $7,400. So I'm just not going to be getting there all that much. Next up, we're going to be going to Harold Varner off of the miscut. Nobody's probably going to want to play him here. I think he might get single-digit ownership, but in my opinion, he should probably be like an $8,500 golfer this week. Before his miscut, a 13th at the Shriners, a 29th at the Safeway, and a 7th at the Wyndham. He's been playing good golf. What is the issues with Harold Varner? Well, we didn't really have the shot link or anything. We just knew that he lost 5 strokes and missed the cut at the Bermuda, which was the issue there. But the long-term issues are just really going to be the putter for Harold Varner. But everything else, he's a top 10 ball striker in this field, top 5 actually. He's 6 on approach, and he's 3rd tee to green. He's a very strong golfer who should honestly probably be like 15% on this week. I think based off of the missed cut last time, he's now missed 2 out of his last 4 cuts. I don't think you're going to get as much ownership as you should. So Varner grades out for me well, and I actually like the fact that we get some low ownership on him. EVR can be said for similar things as well. So if EVR is going to be coming in here at this price range, he's had a very good season so far this year. He's been a guy who I believe has had to battle COVID as well. He's going to probably come in around 8-10% on, which in this price range, it's just fine. Like it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's nothing extreme. He's been okay coming off of a 23rd at the US Open. We haven't seen EVR in a while either. So that's the one concern here is how much do we want to take into effect the layoff for these guys? We know for at least the most part, we don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that we can find out that these guys have been playing almost probably every single day or every other day, even since they're not playing. So I think it's fine for EVR. I think it's fine for these guys. Dustin Johnson, we're just fading because of ownership. Adam Scott, I think that there's just a couple other better guys around him. But EVR, I'm fine to get to. I prefer Harold Varner. But at this point, the last time we saw him at the US Open, finished 23rd. He is a threat to miss the cut, obviously, just because of the downsides in EVR's game, which right now is just going to be the around the green, the putter, and to an extent, sometimes that approach play will leak from him. Overall, ball striking is fine because he has a better off the tee game. He actually has a nice fit here from the fact that he's very good off the tee, top 10 in this field, and he's borderline top 10 in ball striking. It's just the concerns that he can have blow up rounds. He's a 60-1 favorite to win this thing. So actually, based on where he's priced right now in the Vegas odds, his DraftKings price should probably be around like 8,200 and not 7,700. So I think you're getting some value in there, and the ownership isn't coming in enough on it. And then there's a bunch of other guys if you're listening on the podcast version you can see on YouTube that I have interest in, right? Like I have Alex Noren, Taylor Gooch, Wyndham Clark, Kevin Streelman. Like these guys, Mackenzie Hughes, JT Poston, they're in my player pool. They're just marked as maybes because they don't stand out early in the week as guys I definitely want to get to for one reason or another. Projection, course fit, ownership potentially gets me off of them. Guys around them looking similar or better at lower ownership. So the last guy that I'll talk about at the $7,500 plus range, and I believe maybe even in the entire 7K range, the last yes that I'll talk about and then hit on some more maybes is Dylan Fratelli at $7,000 flat. So Fratelli right now is somebody that, yeah, I want to own. Coming off of an 11th at the Zozo back in the end of October is where we saw him last time. He gained over 4 strokes around the green, over 6 strokes total, but 4.7 strokes gained tee to green. Fratelli is a guy that when it comes to the off the tee game, you can bet on that. When it comes to just some of his short game around the green play overall, you can bank on that. He's gained basically in 4 to 5 events from that regard. So you're going to get low ownership here. He's 100-1 to win this thing. So maybe you're paying like a little bit, maybe $100 or $200 overpriced based on the fact that all the other 100-1 guys to win this thing in Vegas are actually priced at $7,400. It's nothing major at this point. So at this point, I think I would prefer HV3, that's Varner, then EVR, that's Van Rooyen, and then at the end of it, Fratelli in that range. To go down a little bit more, there's a bunch of guys who look interesting to me, right? Like Sam Burns, I love playing Sam Burns. We actually haven't seen at this point Sam Burns in a couple weeks now. It's coming on, I believe it's going to be a month, but he's been having a great season, right? A 13th at the Wyndham, a 7th at the Safeway, 28th at the Corrales. At this price range, like he's almost close to being a guy who, if he does make the cut, based on the fact that he can lay down eagles, he can hit the birdies, his putter is very good, he's sound in a lot of different areas. Off the tee game is 3rd overall in this field. He's 80-1 1 to win this thing, so he's probably about $200-$300 underpriced. My projection doesn't make him look as good as the guys that we have as yeses, but based on the fact that he's not going to be that highly owned and he sets up really well and he's consistent, right? If this guy makes a cut, you're probably looking at a borderline walking like a top 30, top 25 in the $7,500 range. So Sam Burns is going to be a guy that'll actually make a yes right now. Stenson, if you want to get there, he's just been absolutely, you haven't seen much, right? Like all his stats last 50 rounds will look good, but some of those rounds are going to be a way long time ago and not taking into account a lot of his recent form, which has not been great. Cam Tringale, Lucas Glover, these guys that are in my player pool if you're listening to the podcast and you can't see them marked as X's. The X's are just guys that are in a player pool. The N's are guys that I've just fully faded. I'll talk on Sepp Straka at $7,000 flat. He does look fine, but I think that he'll probably be, for a guy that's going to be that cheap, picking up a good amount of ownership. Doesn't mean you run away from him. Doesn't mean he's going to be like 20% owned, but if Sepp Straka comes in at 10% owned at $7,000 flat, there's a lot of other guys, and I mean a long list of other guys around him in the upper sixes or in the low sevens that you can just get to for a guy who is coming off of a couple of good events, right? He made the cut, finished 43rd, and then he goes in out and finishes 21st at the Bermuda, so he does look good. He finished T4 here last year. I think he will pick up a good amount of ownership. If he starts to get to double digits, it's just worth fading, at least in my opinion. We now move to the $6,000 range, and also if you're not familiar, I do have just a lot of stuff on the NFL, but also Patreon projections, link down below, my projections and rankings for this golf event. They're already out and up there. I'll update them based on any withdrawals. I'll update them based on Vegas odds changing. You can check it all out, linked down below on my Patreon, and a lot of other NFL stuff as well if you want to check it all out. Now we get to the $6,000 range. Honestly, below $6,500, I'm really not going to have any interest at all. Maybe like one guy in that range. I don't think I have any real strong interest, but in the 6K range above it, yeah, we have some nice options. McNeely is hit or miss, but that's why he'll be a little bit lower owned. He's coming off of basically a borderline top 20 at 21st. So if you had those bets of the top 20 from him, some of the late movement actually pushed him to a top 21, a T21, and that just stinks if you had the top 20s, but he gained 6.4 total strokes. Then he finished 17th at the Sanderson Farms. It's just all over the place for him. So that's what you're going to get in the 6K range, but he's going to be in play for me. He's actually a nice pivot off of Sepp Straka. Maybe they come in a similar ownership, but I think Straka's just course history and how he's been playing as of late keeps him a little bit higher there. Yeah, Rory Sabatini is a guy that he's made 3 straight cuts, but in 2 of them he's finished basically like dead last after, or bottom 10 after making the cut. But at 12th at the Sanderson Farms, he did that all through the putter though, gaining over 6 strokes. A lot of his game is leaking right now, mainly the approach play. So I think that right now I'm actually going to move him. Now he's still very fine in the short range. You just need the approach play to click. I'm going to move him from a yes to a maybe just because of how bad I'm looking like into it a lot more now. He's lost on approach in 5 straight events, in 6 out of his last 7, and you need your approach play here. And if you don't have your approach play, you better have some off the tee game. And he's gained in his last 2 in the off the tee, which is nice and encouraging. But then before that, he lost in 4 straight in the off the tee. He's not the most accurate for Rory Sabatini. So Sabatini at $6,900. Based on the Vegas odds, I still do like him. Like his 125 to 1 odds means that he's probably $200 or $300 underpriced here. I'll prefer Maverick McNeely in this range. I might even prefer Scott Stallings, who's at the exact same price point. All these guys won't have much ownership. Scott Stallings, his last 3 events, having a 6th, a miscut, and then a 26 at the Bermuda. He's actually looked pretty good as of late. Scott Stallings gained everywhere at the Sanderson Farms. That was very good to see. Then he comes out at the Shriners, losing all 3 strokes in the short game, which was the concern there. So Scott Stallings might actually be somebody that I go to over Rory Sabatini. I think that at the exact same price point, both of these guys are probably like 3, 4, 5% on somewhere in that range. But Stallings has at least been putting it all together and has shown us that he can put it all together in a recent event. Going down a little bit more, a lot of guys, Homa, Hubbard, Danny Willett, all these guys are going to be in my player pool, going down to Tom Holm, going down to Charles. I think that Carlos Ortiz, as long as he suits up here, we saw a recent withdrawal from Ortiz in the past. Last time that we saw him was at the Zozo. He finished 35th and then a 48. So Ortiz is somebody that if he does make the cut, he's very similar to like the poor man's Scotty Scheffler, where if he's going to make the cut for you, and that's going to be a big if, but if he does make the cut for you at this price point, he's probably going to outfinish where he actually finishes by a lot based on his overall points. Like he's going to outscore his finishing points on DraftKings because he's going to be able to have a ton of birdies, eagle opportunities. So like where he finishes 35th at the Zozo, he probably finished in the top 25 in DraftKings scoring because of how often he gets birdie or better results to go in his favor. So 6,700, I'll take the chance on that. You have Molinari, who's just fallen off the face of the earth. He's in a player pool, so is Johnny Vegas for me. Then you just get down to a range that's not that great, right? Zhingzhu Zhang and Brandon Grace, they're down here, but not playing the greatest of golf. I think Zhang offers some upside. Duffner, I don't really know if I can go to him here. He fits out a lot of things for you at a cheap price point of $6,500 in terms of he's going to set up very well, like from a standpoint of just approach play and ball striking, but obviously the putter's the big concern there. His off the tee game is not that great. Let's move now below 6,500 and just call out a couple names because let's be honest, this range is absolutely terrible. So when you're down here below 6,500, Danny Lee, Brian Stewart, like the guy that I probably go to the most, and I continue to just go to this guy, and that's going to be the young kid who we've seen pop up in some spots this year. And I believe since he made the cut last week and finished 34th overall, which is a good finish, like he actually paid off for me last week. That's going to be Will Gordon. He's basically a make cut, miscut, make cut, miscut. When he makes the cut, he'll probably finish, I don't know, 34th was one of his best finishes that we've seen in a long time the past 2 months. I think making the cut, he needed to get some sort of eligibility. So now that he's had that, will it be as much motivation? Well, he's 150 to 1 odds to win this thing. So he's probably about $500 under price. Like he should be the upper 6K range based on Vegas's odds to win this. He grades out pretty nicely from a ball striking. He's top 10 off the tee in this field. So I actually like Will Gordon at 6,400. It's like a broken record, but he just obviously stands out, not only from like fantasy points per game, but also just based on the fact that you're going to have Vegas pretty much indicating that she'd be like a $6,800 to $6,900 golfer. So I like Will Gordon at 6,400. Some other guys that are going to be in my player pool. John Ha is going to be in my player pool at $6,300. It's something crazy here. The putter's going to be fine. He's basically average everywhere at this this point. He just grades out a little bit better than anybody else in my projections at that point. And then nobody else. Like Chris Kirk, if you really wanted to punt at $6,200, nobody below that is going to be in a player pool for me. Nate Lashley, Kevin Chappell, Robbie Shelton, they're all in a player pool, but I would prefer probably Will Gordon the most out of this range, and it's just Dusty. So thank you for tuning in to what is going to be the Masters Eve week with the Houston Open coming here. You get some guys just trying to tune up their game. Get a lot of big names in this field with Brooks and Dustin Johnson, Hideki, Hatton, all those guys up top. Thank you for tuning in. Before you go, please do hit the like button, hit the big old subscribe button that pops up, and check out and support Monkey Knife Fight. My last name, Vetri. You'll get free money bonus on player props. So if you like doing player props, it's not just for golf. Like if you're watching this and you're like, I never really do golf player props, but I love playing the over-unders on how many passing yards X player will have, Matt Stafford, how many receiving yards and overall Julio Jones will have, the more or less. Those types of things and a bunch of different games. You can check them out. Link down below on Monkey Knife Fight. Promo code Vetri, VETRI, will get you a free money bonus up to $50 Rooskies. Thank you so much for tuning in. The next time that we talk about golf, it will be the Masters next Tuesday morning. The Masters look into for DFS, and we'll have a live stream. I'm planning to have a live stream next Wednesday, so be sure to check all that out. Hit the notification bell so you get notified of when I go live, not only for that event next week, but all the other content that I have coming out for the NFL this week. You can check out my Twitter at DFS. I have a pinned up tweet that tells you my schedule for the rest of the week and already the content that I have released. Thank you so much, and I will see you all in the next one.